Hernandez, and this is another Deckbox Top 10. We're doing our War of the Spark pre-release extravaganza. We're doing all the top 10 lists of all the different colors. We got red this week. Today.
Moment, time, now.
Now. We got red right now.
Neheb, Dredd Horde Champion. 2, red, legendary creature, zombie minotaur warrior.
There's
Trample,
some text on these
it's
cards.
It's a 5/4. When Neheb, Dredd Horde Champion, deals combat damage to a player or planeswalker, you may discard any number of cards. If you do, draw that many cards and add that much mana, that much red, until end of turn. You don't lose mana as steps and phases end.
This mana. It's just that mana, which is important to know. You don't lose this mana.
It does say this.
But it's...
Gosh, this is just a bizarre magic card.
So what does this do? So Daniel, help me?
So Neheb has been one of those cards where I look at it, this one and previous iterations.
Previous two.
Like all of them.
I look at it and I go, okay, how can I use this to my advantage? And I've never quite figured it out.
Well, so the previous Neheb is an EDH card.
What about
and we won't go in, is a Minotaur tribal card. Don't do that to yourself. But so this one's interesting, right? It is card draw in red, which is pretty interesting. It fills your graveyard, and it adds a bunch of mana. But
so
it does a lot of things. I'm just not sure.
My issue with this card is that I feel like you want to play this card in a low curve deck, right? So a deck that you have 1 drops in, 2 drops in, and then you end up with those extra lands in your hand, and you want something to do with them. This is a great outlet for that, right? You got 3 lands in your hand, you attack with Neheb, you discard 3 lands, you get 3 red mana, and you draw 3 cards.
Which
if one of them is Light Up the Stage or Skewer the Critics or whatever, that's great. But it's a 4-drop that basically makes it almost unplayable in those decks because you're not getting to 4 lands in the first place because you're playing an 18 or 19.
So the stat line of 4 mana for a 5/4 trample screams like green-red stompy. Right? But the ability wants me to play lightning bolts.
Yeah.
Right? So it's interesting, and I'm not sure where it's going to find its home. But a red card that draws you a bunch of cards and produces a bunch of mana is pretty powerful, right? Like the power level is there. I'm just not sure
so
where.
I think this card wants graveyard effect cards, right? So if there's cards in your hand that you want to put into your graveyard that you're looking to discard, or an effect that you can get them back, or something along those lines that incentivizes you to discard a bunch of cards and draw a bunch of new cards, that's where this card sees its play. I don't know what that deck is right now.
And in current standard, I hate the fact that this is a non-bow with Arclight Phoenix. You won't get them back because it has to deal damage to generate that mana and have them discarded. So its looting effect doesn't help you with that chain.
Yeah.
I mean, it does the following turn because you've discarded them, and then
So now they're in your graveyard, so now you need to cast 3 spells without that mana before combat.
I mean, you do have a new hand to cast it with. I don't think it... I mean, it doesn't synergize with Phoenix.
I think that its synergy comes from the fact that at the midpoint in the game, you're discarding cards that you don't want and hopefully drawing new cards, which is a problem that Red used to have, but I don't think it's a problem that Red has anymore, which means this card is probably on the low end of cards that you want to be playing, right? I would rather just hit my opponent with a lightning bolt of some sort and then cast Light Up the Stage.
Yeah, and thinking about this as your top end and sort of like a burn strategy, it is 4 mana for a 5/4 trample, which we mentioned before, so it does have a good rate as far as what damage it's going to deal, but wouldn't you rather just play Phoenix and attack for 3, or play?
I think that just keeps coming back.
Or play Experimental Frenzy and absolutely go crazy because you have 1 mana burn spells.
I don't think that is the home for it. I think that because it is a combat damage trigger, I think it's a green-red. You have access to both the enchantment Rhythm of the Wild and the new Domri at 3 mana that curve into this.
And the Red God.
That's true. I think that
that's interesting.
I think that there's a deck that can be played with this. I just don't know what it is. Maybe the boar is, maybe you want to cast the boar and then use the boar's trigger to put this in play.
Instead, put this into play with Vivian's Arc Bow.
Yeah, I mean, there's things that you can do. I don't know what the deck is yet.
Probably more red green.
Number 9 on the list.
Yeah, we
moving on.
Number 10.
We have that problem.
Bolt Bend. Instant for 3 and a red. This spell costs 3 less to cast if you control a creature with power 4 or greater. So it's like a ferocious throwback. Change the target of spell or ability with a single target.
So I think they just didn't want to use Ferocious because this is the only card that has the effect.
That's not true. There's 3 or 4 of them.
They've been sprinkling this sort of thing in here where they're like,
but it is
something. It is,
and
they'll give something an old ability just in the text, but not by.
There's name. There's a lot of them in.
Or maybe there's just so many new players that they didn't want to use an old.
Well, it's not a full. It's just not a full mechanic in the set. It only shows up in a couple places. I do think so. I think you have to turn it on. I think if you are casting this for 4 mana like ever, you feel really bad about it.
Yeah. I mean, obviously it depends. There are certain points where, okay, I'm casting it for 4 mana, but it's stopping X from happening.
Yeah, situationally in games of Magic, it always happens, but that should never be.
Standard-wise, I think that this card might see play in Standard. There's some green-red stompy decks out there that get to that, right? Like Steel Leaf Champion turns this on.
Yeah.
Neheb turns this on. I'm interested to see if this makes it into Grixis Death Shadow. I'm toying around with the idea of putting it into Grixis Death Shadow. I don't know what it replaces in that deck yet, but that's a deck that's already using Ferocious style cards, right? So maybe this replaces 1 copy of Stubborn Denial, and your opponent edicts you with a Liliana of the Veil, and you can redirect the edict. Or a Sacrifice Effect, which is a way that a lot of people use to kill
shadows and
Death Shadows. Or, you can redirect Fatal Push into a Gurmag Angler, and then it just does nothing.
Will it allow you to do that if it's like target opponent? Will it allow you to redirect it to have that player?
If it says target opponent, yes.
Yeah.
Change the
target
target
as 1 target.
Spell or ability with a single target. So Liliana's minus says target opponent sacrifices a creature. It's a single target. You can then redirect it and say you're now the target.
I am actually kind of low on this card. I don't think it's going to see play in either Standard or Modern. I think that it is going to fall roughly into to the same place that Claim to Fame did, in that it will see like fringy play in Grixis decks, and then ultimately just not be as good as the incredibly powerful package of stuff we already have in Modern.
Sure.
Solidly medium.
But it's a 1 mana.
I love the cuteness of this card in that you can redirect someone's explosion targeting you for 16. You can just redirect it to them. You can redirect someone's Banefire.
Yeah. It doesn't count.
Can you redirect Mastermind's Acquisition?
No, Mastermind's Acquisition doesn't target. Neither does Nexus of Fate doesn't target either, so you can't redirect it. I'm taking your turn. Yeah. There are spells that say target player gets an extra turn, and you can redirect those.
I've had that happen to me a lot.
So maybe it's an EDH card. Number 8 on the list.
This is a card I'm excited about. Krinko, 10 Street Kingpin. 2 and a red for a 1/2. Whenever Krinko 10 Street Kingpin attacks, put a +1/+1 counter on it. Then create a number of 1/1 red goblin tokens equal to Krinko's power. So your base rate's a little bad, right? 3 mana for a 1/2. But he's going to attack as 2/3 the first time. He's going to come with 2 1/1s when he does.
Right. So this is Goblin Rabblemaster. This is
Legion Warboss.
Legion Warboss.
It is, yeah, it's in that mold.
It's in that mold.
I think that it has a lower floor, but also a higher ceiling.
Yeah, so the tokens aren't required to attack, so you're not attacking them into dying every turn, right? If your opponent has a Tarmogoyf on the board or whatever, you're not just throwing away your Goblin tokens. It creates more of them at once, and I like that Krenko can be pumped before combat, and then he creates more. So if you hit him with, what was the card? Collision Colossus, and then all of a sudden you're making 6 tokens.
Yeah, that's pretty good.
Making 6 1/1s on turn 4, pretty powerful.
You can cast 2 Collision Colossus.
That is a thing that you can do. Number 7. No, why are you excited about this card?
Yeah. Well, so it makes a lot of bodies. Goblins. I want there to be a goblins deck. I don't know if it's entirely there, but there is some support for it. He says equal to his power, like we were just talking about, not the number of +1/+1 counters. So you can play a Lord the next turn, which we have in Trashmaster, and then you get 3 the next turn.
Or Domri.
Or Domri
pumps in Rhythm of the Wild. He comes out with a +1/+1 counter or haste. There's a lot of ways to make this card snowball into a lot of 1/1 bodies.
And I think that it's just going to be one of those cards that you are going to not think much of it you're not going to think much of it. It's just going to be a 1/2, and they're going to get one hit in, and you're going to look down on the board, and it's going to have gotten completely out of control.
Yeah. I enjoy the fact that it's just one little note. I enjoy the fact that they're doing these cycles of Goblin Lords that just continually make huge armies of
That's
goblins.
what goblins do.
Yeah.
I know, but it's all
They
contained in
reproduce
these
in
individual
mass.
cards.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Number 7, Sarkin the Masterless. 3 red, legendary planeswalker Sarkin. Static effect. Whenever a creature attacks you or a planeswalker you control, each dragon you control deals 1 damage to that creature. +1 until end of turn. Each planeswalker you control becomes a 4/4 red dragon creature and gains flying. -3, create a 4/4 red dragon creature token with flying, and it comes in with 5 loyalty. So it comes in and can immediately make a 4/4, which is nice.
Yeah, which is, I think, what you're doing like
Multiple
pretty much
4/4s.
every time.
Or if you've gone up a curve somehow in like a 3-mana, 4-mana planeswalker, you can make 2 red dragons. I like the flavor in this card.
The flavor's so
the
good.
idea of like picturing Jace turning into a dragon for a turn and attacking fascinates me.
Yeah, no, that's pretty fun, and I think the like that interaction would be really hilarious. Just like, you're now a dragon. What? Why am I a dragon? What's going on? What is this?
As they crash to the ground because they don't know how to fly.
What are wings? Yeah,
I think this card is, in a lot of ways, kind of pure shenanigans. Like, it's a 5-mana Sarkin. It does make a 4/4 dragon. We've seen Sarkin do that before. I think that static ability is neat, but at 5 mana, I think it's kind of...
So I think that the static ability gets out of control the more dragons you have, right?
Yeah,
Whenever
you can't attack through... so any one toughness creatures can't attack immediately. If you have another dragon already, which is a possibility, right? You can play a 4-mana dragon into this, make a dragon.
Which 4-mana dragon am I playing?
Ferrex.
Okay.
Yeah.
He was ready for that question. Aaron was all over. He was like, come on, ask it. I know you want to. Got him!
Well, and you can also then play Mizzet at 6, which is a great dragon.
There are dragons.
Number 6! You were saying?
No, we can move on.
Number 6, go ahead.
Hearthfire. So 1 in a red, instant. As an additional cost to cast the spell, sacrifice a creature or planeswalker. Hearthfire deals 4 damage to any target.
4 damage for 2 mana.
Yeah.
Common.
Great rate. You gotta sack something.
my God.
Gotta sacrifice a creature. Now, if there are creatures out there that you could sacrifice that would then deal damage to something, you could turn this into like a 2-mana 5 damage. That's pretty good.
Yeah. Thank you, Footlight Fiend.
Now that's a 1-mana.
I think
Black
that
or
people
red.
are underestimating this card right now.
Probably.
I think like Boros Charm out of Modern Burn is really good, and this is in some ways a lot more flexible than that. You do have to pay the cost of sacrificing, but it goes anywhere.
Right, but in Boros Burn, you sack your block creature, and now instead of dealing 2 damage, it's dealing 4.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, this card is interesting.
And
there's really it deals 4 damage to any target.
it is a red instant that
It's-
deals
yeah.
X damage to something.
We haven't seen a spell this powerful since Boros Charm.
Yeah. Well, and I am really excited. I think that people are a little low on this in limited, but I'm going to put like 9 of these in the deck and just finish people.
Absolutely.
With them.
Sacrifice my 1-drop
You'll
that I
be
played
so
earlier
glad
in
to
the
get
game.
these wheeling to you the first few drafts you did.
Yeah.
I was doing Phantom drafts in between Sarkin's Catharsis, which is not a good card, but I just wanted to see how much burn I could get in my deck, and I got like 56 points of burn in my deck, which is really silly for limited.
All right. Let's move on to the next card because I actually have a question with the next card in this card.
All right,
I don't know
read,
how the rules.
then read it.
Chandra, Fire Artisan, 2 red, legendary planeswalker. Chandra comes in with 4 loyalty counters. Static effect. Whenever 1 or more loyalty counters are removed from Chandra, Fire Artisan, she deals that much damage to target opponent or planeswalker. +1, exile the top card of your library. You may play it this turn. -7, exile the top 7 cards from your library. You may play them this turn. Is sacrificing a planeswalker removing the counters? Okay, I didn't think so because that would be busted.
So that is combat damage, direct damage from something like Heartfire, or just removing them by -7 here.
So her -7 then would deal 7 damage to a target,
Yes.
along with
drawing 7 cards.
Opponent or planeswalker, not target.
So I think that this Chandra's big problem is the current existence of Experimental Frenzy, and I bet you will agree with me on this. I think that she would be really good in that kind of 4-mana card advantage slot out of the red deck where you just finish them off. typically coming out of the board, Frenzy is powerful enough that it is in the main. I think if we're in a post-Frenzy universe, I think you would see these in the board of Mono Red. I don't know if it will see play because it has to fight with Frenzy.
When I first read this card, I defaulted to it being any target. I didn't read that it was just opponent or Planeswalker, and I think that reduces its efficacy.
So if it gets attacked, she doesn't get to kill it.
You just get to deal damage to their other Planeswalkers,
she just doesn't have a mechanism.
But if you read this in the sense that you cast her, you plus her, so she's got 5 loyalty counters on her. You're probably not casting the top card of your library if you've just cast her for 4, but maybe you have more mana. But so she's got 5 loyalty on her. Your opponent attacks her next turn and kills her with creatures. It essentially reads gain 5 life, deal 5 damage to your opponent. Absolutely. And at that point, I think that her rate is probably pretty good. Though, again, I don't like the idea of a 4-mana do-nothing card on turn 4.
Right. And that's kind of where I think she falls short.
Yeah.
Like, I like the idea that it is that save life and the kind of like redirect damage, but because you can't target creatures, because there's no removal aspect of this card.
She doesn't feel this at the same power level as some of the other Chandras that you ultimate her.
Even just being able to ping stuff would go a long way.
You ultimate some of the other Chandras that we've had recently, and you pretty much win the game. Right?
I mean, Chandra officially has the Jace problem where Torch of Defiance is probably going to be the best Chandra we've seen for a long time.
I love that card.
So good.
Right, so her -7, you get to look at the top 7 cards of your library. You can cast them.
Yep. You've dealt
that
7
turn,
damage to a player.
You deal 7 damage, but it's not anytime you cast an instant or sorcery, deal 5 damage to a player. Right. The next card I'm excited about.
The next card, I think, is one of the most likely to see modern play.
So
you want to read all that text.
Sure. Dreadhorde Arcanist. 1 and a red. Creature, zombie wizard. It's a 1/3 with trample. Whenever Dreadhorde Arcanist attacks, you may cast target instant or sorcery card with converted mana cost less than or equal to Dreadhorde Arcanist's power from your graveyard without paying its mana cost. If that card would be put into your graveyard this turn, exile it instead.
Really good against 0 power or 0 toughness defenders.
Awesome. This card, it doesn't have to deal combat damage in order to cast the spells out of your graveyard.
You just have to attack.
This card reminds me of Snapcaster. It is not by any means a Snapcaster, but it reminds me of Snapcaster.
Yes.
You know what Snapcaster can't do? Snapcaster can't get pumped by collision and then attack and cast collision on itself again.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely, you're right. And it's when it attacks. So you
it cares about its converted mana cost, right?
Yeah. But
then neither can this.
You can
cast both. No, it's 4, isn't it?
It makes it big enough.
Yeah, you're right.
So
I was thinking of Thrash.
Right. So that's where the interesting thing with this card comes into play. If you can pump it, if you can grow it, if you can put counters on it, if you can, however you're growing this card, you're then able to cast spells from your graveyard for free. Now, the interesting thing about this card might not be necessarily in Standard. There are a lot of cards that I want to cast that are 1 or less mana in Modern. I attack with this, I get to cast my
Mutagenic Growth. Go.
Inquisition of Kozilek.
Yeah, that's where I am.
Or my Thoughtseize during combat.
Yeah.
Or Serum Visions. Or Surgical Extraction. Or name your 1-drop of choice. There are a ton of 1-drops in Modern and Legacy that you want to cast off of this.
I actually think that even in Standard, that is the better way to build around it. I think you would much rather be getting back. You want to have a lot of 1-mana spells.
Yeah.
And if you don't want to count on getting back your bigger things by pumping it and then get it. I think that's too many hoops to jump through. I think you want to be happy with the value.
Right. So in Standard,
spells, and I think they exist.
In Standard, I think that there are some 1-mana pump spells that you might want to cast with this. I don't know. Giant Growth is now back in Standard, so Giant Growth it's now a 4/6 with Trample, and you get to cast a 4-drop instant or sorcery from your graveyard for free. There's a lot of interesting play in that. Yeah. But I'm excited to see where this card goes in Modern, and I'm excited that that's not the first time we've said that in this set. There are a lot of cards that are going to impact deck building in a larger scheme.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think our next one actually potentially has modern applications as well.
It's got a lot of text on it.
It does have a lot of text.
Not
as much text because it is a tank. Mizium tank, 1 red for a 3/2 vehicle with trample. Whenever you cast a non-creature spell, Mizium tank becomes an artifact creature and gets +1/+1 until end of turn. crew for just one. So this follows into a pattern of some pretty good vehicles in the past, turning into a creature by itself, so you don't have to crew it. Pumping itself, being an artifact, all these things are
Crewing
super
for
relevant.
one, right?
Crewing for one.
So it's a 3/2 that crews for one. So you turn your 1-drop into a 3/2 with trample, which doesn't sound amazing, but
it dodges sorcery speed removal.
Yeah.
The
Evades
pump effect.
rats.
Yeah,
That's
the pump
amazing
effect
thing
is
about
even going to
vehicles.
help you get away from some instant speed removal, right? You're going to give another 2 points
Now,
of toughness.
the thing that I like about this, with whenever you cast a non-creature spell, it doesn't matter what turn it is, right? So if your opponent is attacking into it, and you have something, you have a kill spell or an opt or something, you get to turn this into a 4/3 to block with.
Yeah.
At the same time.
Do you think this will just get slotted into the Phoenix deck in Standard?
I think it's interesting. I don't know if the Phoenix deck wants to take a turn off to cast this on turn 3.
I kind of think you do. I think that a lot of times you are you can play this. You play this in your setup turn, then you cast 3 instants and sorceries the next turn, discarding your Phoenixes, and you're hitting with your Phoenixes and like a 6/5.
Yeah, no, I mean it's definitely a card that's buildable or slottable, right? You can build a deck around it, or you can slot it into another deck.
Yeah, definitely a card I'm pretty excited about. For very fair things. This next card is a card that I'm excited about for very unfair
I am
things.
also excited about this card.
I'll let you tackle this one.
I've been trying to make Mono Red Phoenix work a little bit better in Modern, but Finale of Promise has some promise for that deck. So X, Red, Sorcery. You may cast up to 1 target instant card and or up to 1 target sorcery card from your graveyard, each with converted mana cost X or less, without paying their mana costs. If a card cast this way would be put in your graveyard, it's exiled. And if X is 10 or more, copy each of those spells twice. You may choose new targets for the copy. Whoo, boy. Like,
Holy
so
bucket.
I'm already trying to do Electro Dominance Wheel of Fate.
Yeah.
And then this lets me recur that and be redundant about it when I already get rid of the cards or I discard them because I didn't want to cast the Wheel of Fate at that time.
Yeah.
So I like this card. For 3 mana, for 2 red and 1 more mana, you cast it, and then you can cast Serum Visions and Lightning Bolt, and then you get your Phoenix, or Faithless Looting and something else, and you get your...
Oh, the fact that you cast both the spells and get your
it says,
Phoenix
because
back.
it says
That's
you cast
gas.
them.
Yeah.
So this is, you
That's
can draw this one card and
you get
cast
Phoenix.
3 spells. So that makes this card
That's
interesting.
really awesome.
And
I like
and then
that.
there's more to that, right? So you get to the point where you have 12 mana, all of a sudden you're casting Manamorphose and making more mana, and you're copying it twice, so you're drawing 3 cards and making 6 more mana. Like, there's just a whole lot of shenanigans in there. I don't think the Phoenix deck is ever casting this for 12.
No.
Oh, no.
This is getting cast for 12 in EDH.
Although
exclusively.
the Mono Red Phoenix list that I've been running, I happen to also try to run Runaway Steamkins, and let me tell you, those things generate a lot of mana in Mono Red Phoenix.
I was interested in this card in terms of maybe a mono red Tron deck, or a green red Tron deck, where you've just got a bunch of ridiculously high cost sorceries that aren't necessarily good by themselves, but being able to copy them and cast them again. So you can't cast fireballs out of your graveyard with this, because X would.
I mean,
just
this
be
takes
really-
the place of your fireballs,
But,
right? You
yeah.
play something else.
But
It's
I mean, if there's a 5 mana card that you want to cast 3 times, that wins the
plow
game.
under.
I mean, there is a list of cards that for 10 or
Awesome
less
nice mana base you got there.
for
Gone.
Now all I want to do is copy a plow under 3 times.
So
I do think ultimately that where it will be best and where it will see play is closer to kind of what Matt was doing, getting like the wheels back.
sure.
Yeah.
And
just shenanigans.
All right.
Like,
The-
you
and
do
the
your
absolute
wheel and you do your lightning bolt
Just
and you just go.
Real quick, one more card that I want to play with this. Pyromancer's Goggles in this card. So you're copying this card, and then you get to copy it and cast the spells, and it just gets messy. So maybe I need to build an EDH deck around that. I don't
Wait, why would you play
you
Storm?
should. So one last parting note: Mizzix. EDH is where this is going to get the biggest and most absurd.
Yeah.
Which is it's basically a Pyromancer's God.
So number one
in
on
full
our
spirit
list
of
is
shenanigans and insanity and Red doing crazy things and
number one on our
all
list
hail.
could not come as a
Dan
surprise to is this Ilharg? Is that how we're pronouncing this?
Ilrog.
Ilrog? Is that an I? Ilrog, the raised boar. 3
The R is after the A. It's Ilharg.
Ilharg. Okay,
Ilharg.
Sure. I can't read.
Ilharg.
Don't make fun of me. 3 red, legendary creature, boar god, 6/6, trample. Whenever Ilharg, the raised boar, attacks, you may put a creature card from your hand onto the battlefield, tapped and attacking. Return that creature card to your hand at the beginning of the next end step, and then again with the cycle gods, whenever it goes to the graveyard or is exiled from the battlefield, you may put it in its owner's library, 3rd from the top.
So he's a 5-mana 6/6, which is good. He's a sneak attack.
Which is good.
Which is good. And he doesn't die. Which is also
good. Yeah, he doesn't die, and he puts anything into it. It's not creature card with less converted mana cost. It's not creature card with less power.
This is a red card that lets you recur ETBs.
Yeah, this is a red card that lets you recur ETBs. This is a sneak attack on a creature that lets you put Ulamog into play and attack with Ulamog and get his attack trigger.
No. So the attack triggers, they have to be declared attacking. So any attack triggers you don't get on this.
Yeah.
But you do get all of your end of the battlefield abilities.
And combat damage.
Yeah, and combat damage. So anything triggering off combat damage, go for it. So not so great with the Dreadhorde Arcanist.
Works with the head.
But works with the head. You know what else it works great with? Galta.
Also Ronus.
Or Rona.
There's a lot of cards that this works with. I think that you will see this in Standard. I think it's possible that we see a resurgence of a sneak attack, Blue Moon, Blood Moon style deck in Modern with this card.
Sneak attack's not in Modern yet, so this will be the first iteration of that effect.
Through the Breach.
Through the Breach.
So yeah, so it recurs. It's a Through the Breach effect.
Yeah. Sure.
So it's a redundant Through the Breach.
This is a card that people are very excited to build around. I'm excited to see what happens with it. You have to kill it before it attacks, and good luck because it comes back in.
Yeah, well, and if you're spending your time tapping out to kill it, time and cards tapping out to kill this.
The only way that you kill any of these gods is if you counter them on the way down,
or you turn them into 1/1 frogs with Kesmina's Transmutation.
Okay, and that's our top 10 red cards,
which is clearly before we
okay.
I do think that this card is one of the most assured to see play all over the place. I think you're going to be seeing boars left, right, and center. I think it's good in Standard. I think it's good in Modern, and I think that you're going to see a lot of people build it in EDH because that recurring ETB is really strong. So this is, I think, going to be one of the most prevalent certainly of the gods. But yeah, red cards.
Red cards. With a lot of text. All of a sudden, red requires reading, which I thought
this was more text than any red list ever should be. I also think that this is probably the one with the most direct modern applications. Right? We spent a lot of time talking about modern in this video.
Yeah.
So look out for that. Look out for new red cards because Phoenix wasn't enough. We'll be back at you next time talking about blue and black cards. So look forward to that.